Sephora stores are everywhere you are. So just pop in. When you need a brown lip to match your 90s playlist. A confidence boost before your interview? Or a last-minute gift for mom's birthday. There's always a Sephora near you. Just pop in. Use our store locator to find your local Sephora or Sephora at Kohl's.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify. Two of our favourite Olympic sporting moments have centred around the wonderful sport of hockey. We were both there, and we've mentioned it once, twice, maybe a million times at the Diodoro in Rio in 2016, when the main BBC news on BBC One had to be delayed as Kate Richardson-Walsh and her brilliant team defeated the Netherlands to win Olympic gold. It was a shootout win as well. Our interviews by the bins afterwards remain legendary. More on that coming up. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and this is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy, the behind-the-scenes conversation of British sport. And in this case, behind the bins. The previous Olympic moment was I was a kid, and I know Michael was as well, hearing Barry Davies utter those immortal words, "Where were the Germans? Frankly, who cares?" as the men's team won Olympic gold in '88. So it goes without saying, we are incredibly excited about Paris 2024. It's less than a year away, so let's find out more about it.
My name's Nick Pink. I'm Chief Exec of England and Great Britain Hockey, and absolutely delighted to join you.
Nick, hockey is just one of those quintessential Olympic sports, isn't it? Every 4 years, we can really get behind two teams going for medals at the Olympic Games.
It is 100%. And what's great is that level that you talk about, the men's and women's at the elite point, runs right through the sport. So we've got equal participation of men and women at the community and grassroots level. We see it run through our organisation, our administration, where we've got aspirations to get there on the coaching side of things, and we're making some good progress. So the beauty of the sport is played out at that Olympic Games moment every 4 years, where you see men and women competing on that equal par for that gold medal, hopefully, as you just played back in your introduction from 2016 and 1988.
Yeah, that is the history for the men, 88. We all remember Sean Curley and others from 2016. The women, Maddie Hinch, unbelievable. Your job, though, now is with less than a year to go to prepare two teams, hopefully, for the next games and making more momentous historical moments.
Look, 100%. And, off the back of Tokyo as well, which was, such a different Olympic Games for so many different reasons. COVID's still very much part of our lives. We're all recovering from that still, and we're still getting through that. But what opportunity Paris provides for us to showcase the sport of hockey back on that global stage, back in the Olympic point. And the teams are making good progress. The men have just come off the back of the European Championships. The men came second to the Dutch. It was a real ding dong of a game, a bit like you experienced in 2016 by those bins. We need to come back to that conversation shortly. But just in terms of the impact that can have, and we know those special moments, and hockey's been part of those special Olympic moments over the last 20, 30, 40 years. There's a real excitement leading into Paris for us. Men making good progress at the Europeans, women doing some really good things. And we know they are hardened competition tournament players. And there's a real nice mix of a few players that have experienced a few games now, and those coming to the first games.
I was going to ask that, Nick. Is there ever a time where we can have a level where actually the men and women are competing at the same level with the ambition of winning those medals? We mentioned 88 and then 2016, but they were on a different level, and the women have dominated with Commonwealth gold last year, and obviously success in Tokyo.
Look, absolutely. We aspire for both to be top three in the world. We definitely aim for that in those sort of 4-year cycles leading into the Olympic Games. And I think we're about as close as we've been for a number of years, to be honest, John. So looking at how the men have really raised their level in recent years, and we've seen that World Cup at the beginning of the year, they just missed out to Germany. You were just talking about the Germans in relation to 88 again, but we just missed out on shootouts to them in the quarterfinal of the World Cup. We beat them in the semi-final this time at the European Championships. The top 4 European teams sit in the sort of top 5, top 6 in the world. So it's a really competitive competition just a few weeks ago. And all those teams beat each other on the way to England playing Netherlands in the final. So we're competing at a global level now, which is really encouraging. We had a really good Pro League series, which involves the top 9 nations in the world. We came second in that as well. So we're starting to see a really positive trajectory on the men's side. The women, as I say, that they perform well in tournaments. They have traditionally done so. We saw that in Tokyo picking up bronze. We saw that last year, as you mentioned, with the Commonwealth Games getting gold and beating Australia. So we feel that we're getting to a point now where from a level we're getting to a point where both the men and women are able to compete and compete for medals, and hopefully gold medal leading into next year.
And have we qualified yet?
Not yet. So I can talk you through the qualification process. And yeah, like any international federation, it does change sometimes, as you probably experienced with other sports that you probably interviewed. But the Europeans is the most competitive continental competition in the world because of just what I've said there. The four of the top 6 in the world compete in Europe. So you have to win the Europeans to qualify. My disappointment was high for the lads that just missed out against Netherlands, even more so knowing that, the budget impact of getting to an Olympic qualifier was there too. Olympic qualifiers take place in January. So there's 2 8-team men's tournaments, 2 8-team women's, and the top 3 from each of those 8-team competitions qualify to the Olympics. So there's another 6 spaces for the men, another 6 spaces for the women, if that makes sense. So yeah, mid-January, we'll be heading off and we'll be competing in those qualifiers.
So no worries about what your New Year's resolution
Correct.
will be at 100%. The end of this year. We were at Bisham Abbey at the invitation of UK Sport and the UK Sports Institute. And we were speaking to the CEO, Sally Munday, who obviously was your predecessor. Yep. And she said to us that we had the simplest sports system in the world in the UK. From the outside looking in, doesn't feel like that. Can you tell us the structure of how you as Great Britain hockey come together for an Olympic Games where we have England hockey, Scotland hockey, Wales, etc. as the home nations?
Yeah, of course. And I'm glad the simplicity of that message was mentioned by Sally. I'll let her explain that in simple ways. But what we have is the benefit of being England, Scotland and Wales for the majority of our time. But then we compete as Great Britain at the Olympic Games. So we have an agreement in place between the 3 nations, which essentially means that England plays a double role. So we play England and Great Britain. And what we've learned as we've adapted that, Michael, is that we pretty much run the GB program full time, so that what it doesn't feel as if it's an England and a Great Britain program and the GB and then an England program again. So from a performance perspective, the best athletes in England, Scotland and Wales come together in that GB form. And then there are opportunities to participate as England in Europeans, World Cups, as there is for Wales and for Scotland in those opportunities, as well as the Commonwealth Games. What that provides is those athletes, particularly in Wales, Scotland and England, to compete at that global level. And then the best athletes compete for Great Britain. It's not without some of its challenges, of course, but that's essentially the simplistic way of kind of talking through how that works. So I sometimes have a couple of hats on, but on the whole, it works really well. And we have really good collaboration with our colleagues in Scotland and Wales around it too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the challenges of how you then integrate players from England, Wales and Scotland together and how long you get as Great Britain to prepare for the Olympic Games? Because that is essentially, certainly as far as the viewing public are concerned, is where you're going to be judged.
Correct. And I think that's where playing that sort of 4-year program at that performance point is really important. But we also embed it within the talent structures. So as those young players start to develop and get through age group and then ultimately into what we call our development program, just enables players to transition quickly and effectively into being part of a GB program rather than a national one. It's never straightforward because, of course, you have to have a hub, and our hub is at Bisham, as you were saying. And so there's always travel, there's accommodation to work out, there's overnights to work out, with some amazing families in the local area that put people up above their garages and things, to help out and all that good stuff. And the commitment of the athletes is staggering, and we can see it now because take the Europeans that I've just mentioned. Wales participating at the European level, they drew with Germany 3-3 in their first game. It's the first game of the competition for Germany men, and Wales pushed them all the way. And actually, at the end, we're probably a bit unlucky not to get a win against them. So if we get the opportunities right, if we provide the right opportunities for each of those athletes coming through, then that's only going to strengthen our position as Great Britain.
Do any of the players bring the wrong kit?
No, we make sure that definitely doesn't happen. Particularly for our partners and sponsors, that's really important. Sometimes the staff do, so we have a couple of backups in the office just to make sure, John. But it's a good point. And sometimes when I see them, so Rupert Shipperley, for example, and Jacob Draper, part of the GB program as well as playing for Wales. So when I see them at European Championships, I've got to remember as well as they do too. So. There's bits like that, but hey, it's pretty common in Olympic sport and Paralympic sport. There's different models that work in different sports in different ways, but on the whole, we all work towards that model.
And talking of kit, you've got a brand new kit partner, a new deal that you've signed.
Yes, Mizuno. We've been with Adidas for 14 years. They're obviously a Team GB partner, but we went out for a tender process earlier this part of the year. Mizuno really impressed and came through as our preferred partner. So we're looking forward to working with them.
I just want to pick you up on that because one of the big landmarks as you head towards an Olympic Games or a Commonwealth Games is the unveiling of the kit. And then you meet the athletes at kitting out. Do athletes care what they're wearing, and how have you in hockey specifically, certainly around women's hockey, have been an organization that has really pushed to make athletes care and know that the kit that they are wearing is right for them and the sport that they are playing?
It's a really, really good question and very topical. It really does matter, actually, particularly I say particularly on the women's side of the sport, but actually both sides of the sport, because I guess traditionally it's something we've always taken for granted as a system. I don't think that's that's not necessarily a hockey point, just generally across the board. But look, all the changes across sport in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Look at coloured clothing coming into cricket in the last 20, 30 years. We look back at images. We're talking about 88 and the Seoul Olympics. Look back at cricketing images around that time. You don't see any coloured clothing. You don't see a white ball. You don't see all those sorts of things. But in terms then of hockey and what that means, particularly on the women's front, is feeling comfortable in what they're participating in and making sure that doesn't harm their performance. We saw the changes, obviously, with Wimbledon this year in terms of the women's provision of kit there too. So what we look to do, we changed our regulations nationally at the beginning of the year, which basically enables female athletes in hockey at every level of the sport to wear whatever they feel most comfortable in. So if it's a pair of shorts, a skort, a skirt, a legging, whatever they feel comfortable in wearing, our regulations allow for that. And what we pushed for was the International Federation to change the international regulations to enable that to happen internationally too. And the pace of change sometimes can take a bit longer than you think. So we were kind of anticipating this, launching this sort of somewhere kind of at the Olympics. But to be fair to the International Federation, they snapped at it straight away, changed the regulations immediately. And so what that worked nicely for us is that at the Europeans, we had female athletes competing in shorts, skirts or skorts. Adidas did a great job in turning that around really quickly to make sure that they had that opportunity to do that. We know it's impacting international teams because other international teams are talking about the same thing now. Which is great because that's all about making sure that female athletes can perform and not feeling as if they're anything else. And And then fundamentally, that's role modeling the behaviors that we want to see in sport more generally. Tess Howard, who's one of our leading athletes and represented us at the European Championships and was a key figure of the GB program as well. She's led this. She's driven this, actually, a lot of it. She's been working with us around it for the last couple of years. Her research into it is quite staggering when you look at it. And you look at the roots and the reasons that we've sort of created kit and regulations around kit. And it goes back to Victorian times when ultimately decisions were made by a sort of quite patriarchal society that men wear a certain uniform and women wear a different one. And we're breaking those stereotypes. It's really, sorry, I'm going on a little bit here, but this is quite an important, quite passionate area of ours, mine personally, because you start to then go into kind of reasons why people, particularly girls and women, stop participating in sport. When you go into those years around puberty in particular, and concerns around body image and all sorts of other things, if we're forcing people to wear something they don't feel comfortable in, that's stopping them from playing and participating. And you look at the damage that does personally around personal well-being, but secondly around the drops in participation and all the knock-on negative effects of all of that that's driving. Well, we've got to turn that round. So genuinely, one of the proudest moments I've had in my career, not from a personal achievement, but by an athlete working together with us, with the team really coming behind it, England hockey team, but also the global team with the International Federation, very quickly changes taking place to put us in a better place going forward.
Well, as the father of girls, a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, I love your passion. Because I want my 10-year-old and my 12-year-old to play sport, because I see, even if they never get to an elite level, they probably won't. I see all the benefits of being involved in a team, the identity, the health benefits and everything that brings. It seems unbelievable to me that it's taken this long, Nick.
Correct. And that's the bit. So, the social media posts, if you look at that, I try not to look too much at it, but there's a sort of real positive message around it. Great, brilliant, well done, Tess, for her research and what she's been driving. Well done, England hockey, all that stuff. And then there's the other part, which is, why has it taken so long to get to this? But you have to start somewhere, though.
We're talking to England and Great Britain hockey chief exec Nick Pink. This is Great British Bosses.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
This is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. Nick, how did you get into then being a CEO of hockey? Because you mentioned cricket earlier. I think you were involved in the ICC and you were at golf before that, England golf.
Yep, very lucky, very fortunate, certainly, without a doubt. It's a job I care immensely about. It's a sport I care immensely about. So look, I'm overwhelmed, delighted, and very passionate about what I do. I've been very lucky. I've had 20 years or so involved in sport development at different roles, different organizations. Not where I started with Hewlett Packard in a sort of classic milk round graduate training program after I left university, trying to work out what to do with the career and paying off student debt and all that good stuff that you do. But no, was really lucky to work for the Youth Sport Trust. So I started there and worked for the Youth Sport Trust for about 6 or 7 years in the early 2000s. And that's where Michael was just picking that up. I think that's where my passion for sport comes from, not from a perspective, I've played all my life and sport's been a key part of my life, but in those early years and the impact of early year development. And our system in this country is built on a school system. And actually school sport is therefore fundamental to sport and physical and mental well-being and all the other benefits of it. And actually, one of my concerns is that we seem to be going backwards in school sport, and yet we're making really good progress in the community of the game and community of sport at a national level. That's not a hockey point. So I was really pleased to get that opportunity, because that kind of reaffirmed sort of the grounding experience that I felt was really important. And then I've been blessed, really blessed. I worked for UK Sport for a few years, moved to the International Cricket Council for a few years, Then got a fantastic opportunity to become chief exec of England Golf in my late 30s. And that was an eye-opening experience, because there's a litany of bodies in golf coming to sort of to drive things forward. So a lot of my role was to try and navigate that sort of network of different people, different agencies, different organizations. And then the opportunity to work in hockey when Sally moved on to UK sport, you mentioned her earlier. For me, that was an opportunity to get to a sport that everything sort of comes together into one. And so actually we're launching a new strategy. Gemma, who's on the call here as our our comms and media manager, is driving our sort of soft launch, if you like, of new strategy. I never think most people worry too much about an organization strategy. I do, because it's really important we're clear about our vision, the values, and what we're going to be doing. And actually, this one sport piece is really important, that one team piece, and starting to take much more of a bottom-up approach, so that actually we're sharing the stories of the sport. We touched on quite a few of them today, and actually starting to elevate those messages and using our platform to make sure that those are just an elevation of what's going on at the grassroots community level, whether it's the kit changes, whether it's about ethnic, cultural diversity, whatever it might be, using those platforms to celebrate what the sport's achieving.
A couple of questions from that, Nick. Firstly, you're obviously a fan. Is it important to be a fan of the sport when you're the CEO of it? And the second question is there enough hockey being played in schools, or is it just in private schools?
Yeah, two really good questions. So, yeah, definitely a fan, definitely still play. I've got a son who's 10. He's mad fanatical about it. I've got a daughter who's 7. She sort of dips in and out, but I'm hoping this might be the year that club hockey really captures her, which will be good. So huge fan, played pretty much all my life. Was really fortunate to get into it, because I didn't get the experience probably at school until secondary school. So I went to an old grammar school that had hockey as part of its curriculum. So I got the opportunity to play at school, and then club and university and everything else kind of followed. And 46, still playing, not as well. Some might say not as well as ever, but certainly not as well as I felt I was able to. Not able to get around like I used to. But just the benefits that Michael talked to about being in a team, the camaraderie. Actually, it does help in the context of being close to the issues that affected at the grassroots level. So I enjoy listening into them. Don't enjoy some of the debates sometimes, but that comes part and parcel of it. Do I think it's important? I think it helps, definitely. It definitely helped through COVID, because I think understanding what needed to happen to get sport back on was really important. But I don't think it's a prerequisite. And certainly a lot of my peers and colleagues that I see quite regularly in different roles across Olympic, Paralympic and other sports don't have that background in their sport or in sport. So I think it's more about how you are, who you are, and being able to be clear about what you're trying to do, the vision and strategy and everything else that rolls off it is pretty important, but it definitely helps. And then the second part, in schools, I think it's a real challenge for any sport at this moment in time, not just hockey, because we don't have a PE and school sports strategy that we can hang off. So what you're seeing more and more now is specialists in sport engaging with schools, rather than young people developing those motor development skills, fundamental skills that you need for any sport, particularly hockey, because you need movement. You need to be able to have all of the sort of fundamental core skills that you need. And so actually that for me is the bigger concern. And then secondly, yeah, we want more hockey played in every school, of course we do, but it's got to follow from that point. And I think what we're finding now, or I'm seeing more and more, is it's almost sort of a competition between sports, because we're trying to get bite-sized time of young people's time in school not being able to provide a provision for PE in school sport. So we've got to find a medium to be able to break that down. And when I look back to the work I was mentioning before in the 2000s, when I was working with schools more closely and part of a strategy with investment and structure, I felt that a hockey could work really quite closely with a system that was working, whether it's perfect system or not, doesn't matter, but there was a system in place with funding to be able to access children, young people in schools.
We're obviously a podcast called Anything But Footy. Women's football, it's radically gone up, and there's so much coverage and the success of the Lionesses, and it's brilliant. But actually, could that be detrimental to sports like hockey? Schools are pushing football in schools for girls more than they're pushing other sports where historically they've been successful?
It's definitely been thought through, it's been considered, and all those sorts of things. But for me, that's why I position the 2 points together that I just made, which is let's get children, young people playing more sport, physical activity, developing their physical literacy first. And then let's let the sports worry about the sports bit, if you like, that comes second. So for me, if there's more young girls involved in sport at schools, if it happens to be football, brilliant. If it happens to be hockey, brilliant, or anything else, that has to be a good thing. And actually, if you look at what the Youth Sport Trust, who lead this area in particular, have been talking to, is there's not enough children, young people playing sport and physical activity, and in particular, young girls. So if we're getting girls participating in sport, happens to be football, that's a good thing. And I think it'll have a positive impact for a sport like hockey, because it becomes about choices and opportunities. And if we can provide the right choices and opportunities, and we work with our club network and university network and whoever else we're working with, and there's plenty of community groups and others that roll through it, and we provide real quality opportunities with good coaching, safe environments. The beauty of the sport of hockey is that equal gender piece that we talk to. Most hockey clubs I walk into, you feel it immediately. You've got men, women, boys, girls. They're all playing on a Sunday or a Saturday. There's league hockey even intermixed on the men's and women's side, all of that stuff. So it'll be about a choice then, and what that young person in that example, young girl, wants.
When I was at school, which was an awful long time ago now, you had 3 rugby teams. And then if you couldn't get into either of the 3 rugby teams, so basically if you weren't one of the 50 best rugby players in the year, you went to play hockey. And I hope that things have changed now and there is a bit more choice. And I'm sure that you've got the data and done the research. Did you harness the success of 2016 enough as an organisation after what happened in Rio?
There's a labyrinth of things that go in my mind when I get asked that type of question. Why weren't we ready before 2016? Why weren't we ready at any stage to start? Why is it that there's a moment that requires us to be ready for any young person or young adult to participate in hockey? So there's a bit of me, and I remember this from 2003. I don't know if you remember that point where England won the Rugby World Cup, and why is rugby not seeing this big bounce? Wimbledon has this opportunity every year with this amazing televised experience, but do we see tennis grow? We don't. So actually, I'm not sure I buy into the moment necessarily, and the moment being the most important thing. I think the most important thing is the structure, the system, the people, most importantly, and the volunteers in the sport are ready to welcome and accept more people as they come through. There's no doubt that there are these moments that we have, and there is an impact in the moments, but I don't believe they lead to transformation in terms of growth of exponentially levels of sport. And there's so many examples we could probably talk to, but there's no doubt that it provided an inspiration moment. There's no doubt that people talk to it, they reference it. We've referenced it today many times already. So actually it's about being ready and the sport being ready. And therefore, that comes back to programs, systems, people, and all that other stuff that we need to be ready for.
So just before John wraps things up and explains the whole bin story, because I'm conscious we probably need to get that into this episode. You talked about Johnny Wilkinson and the Rugby World Cup in 2003. I remember at that time, rugby was the new football. And then the Ashes in 2005, suddenly cricket was the new football. And then hockey was the new football in 2016. Now women's football is the new football, if that makes sense. Looking at a couple of the other jobs that you've done, golf and cricket. Golf is in the Olympics now. Is that the right thing for that sport? And cricket is going to come in 2028. Should the English and Wales Cricket Board and Cricket Scotland come and speak to you guys about how to get a great British cricket team?
Yeah, and on the latter, there's so much networking and discussion that goes on. So it happens all the time. And I speak to colleagues in cricket and other sports all the time as well about what they're doing, whether it's All Stars cricket, Dynamos cricket, whatever else is kind of going on. So there's a lot of that happens already. What do I think? I mean, overall, as long as it doesn't have a negative impact on hockey and hockey's participation, I guess I'm not too worried. But I guess I always go into why are sports suddenly seeing this opportunity with the Olympics, and what are they not getting from what they're currently offering that provides the Olympic opportunity, I guess. golf's a funny one in the Olympics in the context of, there's 4 major competitions. You've got the Ryder Cup, the Solheim Cup, and other things. And actually, how successful that is. It's been back in for two rounds. So it was obviously 2016 and obviously Tokyo delayed. I'm not sure the success of it has necessarily been felt yet, but maybe there's an opportunity to do it. But the opportunity I think was missed was the ability to bring men's and women's golf together. That's the bit I think, you could see that working really well for a sport like golf, and the team sport dynamic that could bring potentially for an individual sport. But they decided not to go down that route. So that's their decision. That's their thing to do. And then for cricket, I think if it's elevating, a sport at that level, which it will do, I think it's seen in that sort of gender equality piece as well, not necessarily in terms of men and women playing in the same teams, but the presentation of it, then maybe that will help. And maybe that will help participation at home, and maybe it will help what we see in terms of opportunities for young people to access sport. I generally don't worry about those things in the context of impact to hockey, because as long as we do what we need to do, and the game is in good health internationally, and we still got huge number of nations that compete. When we compete in the World Cup earlier in the year, there's obviously a European stronghold with the Dutch, the Belgians, the Germans, the Spanish, us, Wales, but internationally, India, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina. The Argentinian hockey, the stuff I've learned since I've taken this job, Argentina hockey, there's 280,000 people that play every week in Argentina in league hockey, and 80% of them are women. Stuff, I just didn't know that story when it started. And it's amazing what they put on and how they do it. ESPN is a really strong provider and supporter of theirs, and has been for 20 years. So a lot of that's televised. It's quite incredible what they've done. And it's not just in Buenos Aires. It's not just in Patagonia, where you see some of the hockey and other things. Rugby. It's right across the country in Argentina hockey. And just understanding that journey and the impact that's had is quite staggering. So hockey has that real global feel. So I always feel confident that the sport's in a good place when it leads into the Olympics.
It's a good way to finish, Nick, bringing it back to the Olympics and that bin story. It's quite complicated. We won't bore you with the details, but as non-rights holders, we were not allowed to come and interview people on the pitch in the stadium. So we had to interview Sam Quek and Lily Ownsley. The nearest place you could get out of the Diodora, which happened to be a big gate at the side of the pitch, and there were some bins there, and we had to base ourselves there and do the interviews with Sam Quek, and Lily, who just become gold medal Olympic champions, and they're speaking to me and Michael by the bins.
It was a bit smelly.
So just on that, Paris next year, if you could make sure there's some bins nearby, then we can come and meet you afterwards. We can do interviews there as well.
Perfect. I don't think you need to get into comparing French bins to Brazilian bins, but we'll leave it there.
Yes, I think that could be an interesting comparison. Nick Pink, thank you so much for talking to great British bosses from Anything But Footy.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time. It's been very enjoyable. Appreciate it.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.